Welcome to the Warehouse Engineering Management course. So, we will start the lecture 1 by going through the syllabus first. So, in general, we will have 8 chapters in this course. For chapter 1, we will go through the introduction to the warehouse. And then in the chapter 2, weeks last 2 weeks, we will go through the inventory stock analysis class and classifying product in a warehouse. Um, for the next 3 weeks, we will spend for chapter 3, which is about warehouse operation. Chapter 4 only lasts for 1 week, and it's about warehouse networking. Um, and chapter 5 will will be taken place after the midterm exam, and it will last for 3 weeks, about warehouse operation principle. And then chapter 6, which is about productivity, cost, and services in a warehouse, um, only lasts for 1 week. And then in chapter 7, we will go to the IT system applying for the warehouse. And the last chapter um, is about the regulation and safety principle in a warehouse. And for this course, the assessment will be based on the midterm exam, which account for 30%, the final exam, which account for 40%, and all the practice assignment and group project will account for 30% left. And for the syllabus that we already posted online on the Blackboard, you have the list of all the books as well as all the reference for this course. And remember that the main book that we will use for this course is the facility planning, written by John Tompkins and other authors, which I believe that you can borrow from the library. Okay, so let's jump to the first chapter of this course, Introduction to the Warehousing. And for this course, we will go through the 3 main sessions. In the first session, we will discover the definition of warehouse and the reason why we need it in our supply chains. In the second session, we will explore several types of warehouse. And for the last part of this chapter, it will be about the warehouse strategy. Okay, so let's begin with the definition of a warehouse and the reason why we need a warehouse in our supply chains. There are several ways to define a warehouse. So, from the functioning perspective, a warehouse is a large building where goods are stored and where they may be cataloged, shipped, received, depending upon the warehouse type. And from the supply chain logistic perspective, they consider a warehouse as a part of a company logistic system that store product at and between the point of origin and the point of consumption. So, besides, warehousing also provide information to management on the status, condition, and disposition of item being stored. So, considering the following flows of goods, where can you put warehouses? So in general, in a supply chain, we have supplier, manufacturer, retailer or distributor, and finally the end use customer. So where can we put the warehouse? Before jumping to the next session, please pause this video and consider it yourself. Okay, so as you can see that from the definition of a warehouse from supply chain perspective, we can see that the warehouse is actually put in between stakeholder in a supply chain. It means that between the supplier and manufacturer, for example, they will need a warehouse to store their goods before their goods actually deliver to a manufacturer. So in general, a warehouse interrupts the direct flows of goods and the holding of goods in a warehouse generally adds cost to a product. So the next question is, why do we need warehouse in the physical distribution system when it will add more cost to our operation? In order to answer that question, we will explore several benefits that a warehouse will offer. And the first type of benefit is the economics benefit. Economics benefits of a warehouse include consolidation, break bulk, cross dock, processing postponement, and stockpiling. Okay, so consolidation. So here we have the graphic for the consolidation and break bulk for you to better understand these ideas. So in terms of consolidation, if supplies are originating from various sources in small quantity, it may be economical to collect these small shipments at one center and combine them into a large shipment for sending it to the customer. And as you can see here, so we have several plants A, B, and C, and they all send their product to a consolidation warehouse from which this product will be shipped to the end use customer, all three of them. Okay, and break bulk is the contrary to the consolidation. The material arriving in a bulk is divided into smaller shipments for delivering it to the customer. So both offer cost saving on freight, but which should be used on which case? Think about it. Well, maybe I will put this question into the next quiz. Okay, the second economic benefits of a warehouse is crowd docks. A crowd dock facility is similar to break bulk, except that it involves multiple suppliers, and the use of a warehouse is for very short time, which usually lasts within 24 hours to 48 hours. Um, and the materials arriving in bulk in fully loaded trucks are broken into smaller consignments for further dispatch to the customer. And the retail chains can make extensive use cross-docking operation to replenish fast-moving store inventory. And as you can see from the figure here, so we can see that there are several plants A, B, and C, which will serve different customer category, and they all send their product to a cross-dock warehouse. And from this cross-dock warehouse, their shipment will be broken into smaller consignment for further dispatch to each customer based on their demand. The next economic benefits of a warehouse is the processing or postponement. So a warehouse with packaging or labeling capacity will allow postponement of final production until actual demand is known. And it will help reduce total system cost because of it will lower the risk as well as the inventory level. The next economic benefits will be stockpiling. So one of the most popular example for the stockpiling will be toys. So as you can see that toys are produced year round, but they usually primarily sold during a very short marketing effort. So in order to serve the sales in a short time, they need a warehouse for the what we call stockpiling. Meanwhile, agricultural products are usually harvested at a specific times with subsequent consumption occurring throughout the year. And agricultural products also require um, the function of stockpiling of a warehouse so that um, they can be delivered to serve the demand for the whole year. Okay, so the next type of benefits that a warehouse offer is the service benefits. It include spot stocking, assortment, mixing, production support, and marketing presence. So in terms of the spot stocking, there will be a selected amount of a firm product's life selected or spot stock in a warehouse to fill customer order during a critical marketing period. Um, One example of the spot stocking is that the supplier of agricultural products to farmers often use the spot stocking to position their product closer to a service sensitive market during the growing season. The other service benefits of a warehouse is the assortment, And the assortment may represent multiple products from multiple manufacturers or special assortment for space as specified by the customer. Um, One example of the assortment warehouse is when the wholesaler create a specific team uniform, such as the shirt or the pants or shoes that will be specified by one organization or one team. The next service benefits of a warehouse is the missing warehouse. And for a company having many plants manufacturing different ingredients, a warehouse is used as the product missing point to make final product. And one popular example for this missing warehouse is actually the snack producer. So this snack producer will have different plants in different locations, and they will send and each of these plants will produce one type or several type ingredients, and these ingredients will be sent to the mixing warehouse to make up another new flavor. And this from this warehouse, the new flavor will be shipped to the customer. The other service benefits of the warehouse is the production support, which is quite familiar for some of you when the warehouse can provide a steady supply of components or material to assembly plants. Okay, and for the market presence, um, is based on the belief that local warehouse can be more responsive to local customer demand and offer quicker delivery than distant warehouse. So here are the general function of a warehouse. So in general, a warehouse will serve as storing storage, goods protection. They also serve the function of financing, processing, branding, as well as transportation. And a warehouse can be a strategic tool for inventory management, customer service, compliance, document management, and information request. Okay, so we will move to the next session, which is the warehouse classification. There are many ways to classify warehouses, and the first approach is based on the ownership. So, based on the ownership, there will be four types of warehouses: private warehouse, public warehouse, bonded warehouse, corporate cooperative warehouse. Um, and as its name, private warehouse will be the private property. It means that this type of warehouse will belong to some private company or organization. Public warehouse will be owned by the government or semi-government bodies, and they will lease private firm to store the goods. For example, if you find some public warehouse in Ho Chi Minh City, you can find the example of Tân Cảng warehouse, Um, the next type of warehouse is the bonded warehouse. So this type of warehouse is owned, managed, and controlled by the government as well as private agency. And they will be used to store import goods for which import duty is still to be paid. And the bonded warehouse run by the private agency must obtain some type of the license from the government. Cooperative warehouse is owned, managed, and controlled by cooperative society, which we call in Vietnamese hợp tác xã. These societies provide storage facility on the most economical rate. It means that the um, the renting of cooperative warehouse will be cheapest. And the basic purpose of running such type of warehouse is not usually for profit, but for their members' sake. Another way to classify warehouses is based on the function of a supply chain. So we will have four types of warehouse based on this approach. The first one is production warehouse, which located which is typically located within a manufacturing or production site, and they usually hold inventory of raw material or components used during the production. The second type is the storage warehouse. Um, this type is often used for long-term storage of finished goods as part of the company outbound supply chain operation. And usually they might employ in the make to stock supply chain. And the third type is the fulfillment warehouse, which often known as the distribution center. So a typical distribution center act as a center for value-added services such as order fulfillment, labeling, packaging, cross-docking, and transportation. And this DC typically focus on the customer service excellence as well as the efficiency storage. And a, tip, a typical DC utilize a lot of technology. And the last type of warehouse based on the function in the supply chain will be sorting and consolidation warehouse, which we already introduced in the last session. And um, the last way to classify warehouse will be based on the special use. So we will have the special commodity warehouse, and this type of warehouse usually constituted for storing a particular type of commodity such as tobacco, cotton, wheat, um, and this type of warehouse usually um, requires several um, several conditions for the storage. For example, in order to store petrol storage tank are needed, and for storing agricultural product, godowns are needed. So here we have the uh, concept of a godown, which is actually um, another terms for the warehouse. But the main difference between a warehouse and a godown is that products are not arranged properly in a godown, while it is organized and placed properly in a warehouse. The next type, based on specialties, will be cold storage warehouse, which will be used for storage perishable commodity like egg, butter, fruits, or vegetable. And the last type is the institutional warehouse, um, which might serve different institution or body based on the nature of their operation. For example, bank will have their own institutional warehouse for conducting their activity. Okay, so the last part of this chapter will be the warehouse strategy. So for the warehouse strategy, we will go to the um, several questions based on the following order. The first question is to define the ownership of our warehouse. The second question is to define how many warehouses that we need in our supply chain. Uh, the size, the location, the layout for the warehouse, and which product and where that we should put this product in those warehouse. So in terms of the ownership decision, as you can see here, the graph here, so we have two axes. The vertical axis represent the total cost, and the horizontal axis represent the throughput volume. So it depends. For example, when the throughput volume is low, the public warehouse will be more economical than the private warehouse. It means that the public warehousing will offer the less cost than the private warehouse, and vice versa. So public warehousing costs mostly are variable, while the private warehousing costs having a high fixed cost component. And the fixed cost here include the renting or the um, or other type of fees that you want to operate a warehouse. So here we have the table that compare several characteristics between the private and the public warehouse for a firm to consider which type of ownership that they should define for their warehousing strategy. And the public warehousing rate are based on the value, the fragile, fragility, potential damage to another good, volume and regularity, weight density, services required, And for so nowadays, in order to balance between the public warehouse and private warehouse, firms usually come up with the contract warehousing, because this type of warehousing um, will be compensation for seasonality in product, and it will increase geographical coverage, as well as to possibly reduce transportation cost. The next question, the second question in a warehouse strategy is the number of a warehousing. So in order to decide the number of warehousing, we will need to consider the component cost of operating a warehouse, which includes the cost of lost sales, which is the cost incurred when you don't have enough goods to fulfill the customer demand, the transportation cost, the warehousing cost, and the inventory cost. Besides considering the cost component, we also need to consider the warehousing configuration. And in general, we will have two types of configuration, which are centralized warehousing and decentralized warehousing. So centralized warehousing is actually, as its name, is one central warehouse that the manufacturer can send their product to that warehouse, and from this one warehouse, one central warehouse, the product will be delivered to all the customer. And in terms of the decentralized warehousing system, they usually utilize the local warehouse to fulfill the local customer demand. So here are the advantages and disadvantages of a centralized warehousing. In terms of advantages of a centralized warehousing, is my improve the operation efficiency and inventory control. Is help reduce the risk of stock out, which result in high service level. Is lower operational costs, because it's by reducing utility expense and overhead cost. Overhead cost here is actually the cost for the labor. And in terms of the disadvantages of a centralized warehousing, is include extending lead time to fulfill the customer order, because for the centralized warehousing they only have one warehouse. It means that it will take more time to fulfill the customer demand. And also, the longer lead time, the heavier outbound transportation cost. So, based on the advantages and disadvantages of the centralized warehouse, can you analyze the advantages and disadvantages of the decentralizing warehouse? It will be on contrary to the centralized warehouse. Okay? Okay, so that's all for chapter 1. Thank you for listening. And if you have any question, please post it on the discussion on Blackboard, and I will be gladly um, respond as soon as possible.